What's going on, everybody? Today I want to look at this recent shoot I did down here in Florida on Anna Marie Island, and I specifically want to look at the lighting technique that we used. So the technique that we're using is called a book light, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. It's all over YouTube. But if you've seen a book light before, you know it usually looks a little bit something like this. Usually requires 3 stands, one for your bounce, one for your light, and another one for your diffusion. But what's cool about this book light is that you're using one single C-stand. So that means you're using your light, your diffusion, and your bounce mounted all on one single C-stand, which is really cool. It's really beneficial because then that means it's very compact. It takes less gear. We can move really quick because of it. And your client's gonna be stoked about it because it still looks really freaking good. So we're gonna jump over to the gear, show you what I used, and then we're gonna talk about the results that we're looking at very briefly, because then I really wanna show you the setup. I wanna teach you how to set this up. That way you have in the back of your mind, if you're ever on a shoot, you can be like, okay, let's do the single book light setup here, and you can remember this video. Also, I will be posting the step-by-step on my Instagram, so you can just save that and use that as future reference if you want. So I am using the S1H by Lumix. This is my go-to camera. I've been using for the past 5 years on all my projects. All the work that you see on my website or on my YouTube or even on my Instagram, that is all shot on the S1H. And for our lens choice, we are using the Cata Zooms from DZO Film. We're using the 35 to 80 millimeter. And the reason I use this lens was just because it's very versatile. This was an interior design home tour. So we're moving very quick. The light's changing constantly. We're getting wides, we're getting tights. And we've done about 2 home tours now, and I've used this lens on both projects, and it's been great. For all our fixtures, we're using all Nanlite. We're using our key light as the Forza 500. That's what we're using for our book light. And then we're using 3 Forza 60s, and we're using that for fill, texture, and some ambience to bring up the levels. And then lastly, we're using a hair light, and we're using the Pavotube 2s. And then I'm always using my favorite ND filter from PrimslensFX. This is my go-to variable ND because it looks good. There's no X-crossing vignetting. The skin tones are still good. There's no crazy color shift at all. And then it's stackable. Like right here, I have 2 of their filters. So I have the variable ND, and then on front of it, you have a stackable ring. So you can stack any of their favorite filters, maybe one of your favorite filters, and then you can just keep going. I even have their orange flare that I've used on a project for a documentary that I thought looked really cool. They definitely have something for your next project. And if you want, I actually have a code called OLI, just OLI, and you'll get 15% off on your next purchase. They're really great guys. They're in the industry, so they know what they're doing, and they use their very own products. They're not just making them and then not using them. They're using them on pretty much every shoot. So yeah, check them out, 15% off for the code OLI. I'm not gonna dive too deep into all the details here because I really just wanna show you the setup of the book light, but I do quickly wanna show you the results that we're getting, and hopefully this is something that you can use on your next project. Okay, so here we go. We have, as you can tell, it's a very soft look. Like there's really no harsh shadow over here at all. Her face looks very pretty. She looks really beautiful in this lighting. And if you can see down here, we do have a diagram that is really kind of focusing on this. I won't really focus on all this lighting. That's more for texture back here on the back wall to fill in this space. And then we didn't have a ton of powerful lights, but I wish I had a little bit more of a powerful light over here that was filling up in these shadows. It's just what we had, so we had to deal with it, unfortunately. But this is what we came up with, and I do still think it looks really good. But yeah, as you can see, the light is right outside of this frame in the book light, and it's just shooting into the frame, and then it's bouncing straight back through diffusion, coming across, and it's filling in all of this. And it looks super natural. I think it looks really good. We can see, I think we can zoom in here, you can see it's got a really great catch light in her eyes. That's another thing you really want to do. That just kind of brings your subject to life. You can just see this life in her eyes. If you don't have that, it usually kind of looks a little creepy. But yeah, as you can tell, if we zoom in here, look how soft this shadow is. We get a nice little triangle wedge here. There's a little bit of shadow on the nose, looks really nice. Like I said, I'm not jumping into this too deep. I really just want to kind of move over to the setup. But let me show you the second setup and just show you kind of what we did there. We do have like a 60 come in, just slash across, and then we have one bouncing into the wall to give some ambience. But other than that, we are using the exact same book light setup, and we're getting the exact same results. We literally picked it up and moved it over, and that's literally it. We're getting still the same catch light, looks beautiful, same soft shadow, and we're still getting a little bit of side roll off here. So you get like a nice bright, and you can see it's slowly dropping off. Very subtly, and it looks natural for this room. It still looks really good. She doesn't look super sourcey, super lit or anything like that. It just looks clean. So yeah, let's jump into the setup now, because that's really what we're here to talk about. Also, I do want to do a quick shout out to Peter Mokri. That's the guy who I kind of learned this technique from. I saw it on YouTube probably about a couple months ago, and I was like, man, this is sweet. I got to try it on my next project. He does have a YouTube channel that creates really great content, and I just really appreciated him sharing this. It's kind of my go-to now, so thanks, Peter. Sweet, so here is the setup. We're going to be using a single C-stand. That's going to be the only stand you're going to need for the entire setup. On top of that, we will need a grip head that we're going to put our Ultrabounce in. And then to saddle the light, we are going to be using a super clamp. And we're going to use a super clamp, and we're going to put a 15mm rod right here into the portion that kind of snaps in. You could use a Cardellini clamp. I think it actually might work better, to be honest. And then Savage, they make a base for their C-stands that you can actually have another attachment on the top, on their the bigger leg. I think that actually might be ideal. I'll put a link to that if you want to look at that. But for us, we only have a super clamp, and so we're gonna make it work. It's worked for everything else, so yeah, let's get to it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, let's put a sandbag here first. That's going to be your very first move after you get it in place. So let's do that. A tip here would be to kind of move this super clamp all the way to the curve as best as you can. So I want it to be as far as it can so it can fill the whole bounce, so it kind of makes it a larger source. So, and really, really tighten that. You do not want it to move around. I'm using the Forza 500. You could really use any light for this. I do prefer a little bit more powerful light, especially if you're going to be competing with the sun. But if you're indoors, you most likely can get away with most things, especially if you're not facing like a back window. But if you are facing a window and you got to compete with the sun, I would use a little bit more of a powerful light. 500 is probably the lowest wattage I'd go. Cool, so the light is set up. We're going to throw that on. Holy moly. We're going to jump onto the second half where we're going to set up the Ultrabounce and the Diffusion. Okay, so we're running out of space here. We have our Ultrabounce up on the head here. The next thing is going to be putting the Diffusion, and how we're going to do that is by putting a rail in the front. You could use, honestly, a PVC pipe, just something that's long. I have a 6-foot because my Diffusion's 6 foot, but let's say you have a 4-foot Diffusion. You can get a 4-foot PVC pipe or some sort of pole that's 4 foot, and we're going to clamp it to the front. Okay, so we have it on here now, the frame and Diffusion. One tip I would say is make sure when you're clamping that you're clamping to the frame of the 4x4 and not this fabric section. You don't want to ruin that. So I try to make sure I'm always on the frame. Obviously this space is not meant for this, but it is good in small spaces. Maybe not building it in small spaces, but bringing it into small spaces, it's not too bad. But let's strike it up, and then I'm going to put a chair here and show you how soft the light is. It looks pretty good. All right, cool. So this is the book light. This is the exact setup that we just did. I just pushed it off to the side, and you can tell we're getting a super soft look. Now this is a white wall room, and it's kind of a tiny room, so light is bouncing everywhere. So that's kind of not an ideal situation. As you can tell here, see how much spillage we're getting. We look at the false color, it is super soft. We have a nice exposure on this side coming around, and then we also get that Rembrandt. That's exactly what we're wanting. So this looks really good. If you have an assistant with you to set this up, it's probably going to take you maybe 3 minutes tops, as long as he's aware and you guys are aware of kind of how the setup goes. So I definitely recommend doing this setup maybe a day or two before the shoot. But if it's by yourself and if you're kind of used to the setup, you could probably get this done in 5 minutes. Cool, so now let's look at a budget-friendly version. Let's look at how we're gonna bounce the light, not into an Ultrabounce flag or anything like that, but we're gonna use the wall. And pretty much everywhere you go, you're gonna have a wall. So we're gonna use the wall and we're gonna bounce it into a Diffusion. And we're gonna try and still use one C-stand to accomplish this. Let's actually switch to a Forza 60 and let's see if we can get a similar look with a cheaper light. Okay, so this is the Forza 60. Now, first thing is we are at 100% of this light, so we are maxed out. But however, it does look really, really good. It looks a little bit cooler just by looking at it. I can't really remember the other image when I was shooting it, but just from the top of my head, it looks a little bit cooler. Could be wrong. But as you can tell, this is a much more budget-friendly setup. We are using a light that's under $300 with a sheet of diffusion. You could use literally any sheet of diffusion that you want. This light is so much smaller that you could even use a light stand. Okay, so I just want to jump in here real quick because Nanlite had just released 2 new lights to their FC line. We have a 120 watt light and we have a 60 watt light. And I just felt like I needed to tell you this because I wanted you guys to be aware when you're making these purchases. Something that I would have wanted to know before I have made a purchase of a light. I understand that budgets aren't always the highest, and you know we're scraping by sometimes. So if I could help you save money, I would have personally appreciated that someone did it to me. So I want to help you save money if I possibly can. And so we have a 120 watt light that's $260, and then you have a 60 watt light that's $160, I believe. And so I would recommend the 120 watt light. It's the same amount that you would buy for the Forza 62s. I don't think you're gonna be sacrificing the quality of light. I think you'll be sacrificing the quality of build and maybe a few features. I think it's a plastic body. I think the carrying case might be a little more, maybe not so as durable. The 120 watt would be the way to go. If you feel like you want to save even more money, the 60 watt will still be a great choice, and you can get maybe a couple of those if you save up a little bit. But yeah, I think it's worth looking at. I feel like I just needed to tell you that because I didn't want you to maybe buy a light and then be like, dang it, why did I just wait? Or why didn't he tell me? Not that it's my job to tell you, but now that I know the knowledge, I feel like I should at least have said something. So that's why I'm doing this real quick, just a real quick insert. But I'll put those in the description below. That way you check them out, at least, you know, be aware of them, make your decision from that. And yeah, let's get back into the video. Now you are limited because if you have any kind of windows or anything like that, there's no way you're going to be able to beat the sun out there. So you kind of got to be very smart with your placement and with your interviews and stuff like that. But for the most part, this looks really good. And if you had a couple of those lights, you can kind of place them around and give it a better look. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked about this. 60 watt is looking really good with the book light. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm stoked about that. I hope you are too. This might be a nice little setup if you ever need to do a quick interview. Just bring this in a quick little low budget or you know, low gear. You don't want to bring a ton of gear. Bring a couple of these lights and one stand and you're good to go. I mean, that's not too bad. Cool, so that kind of wraps it up for me. I hope you guys find that beneficial, or I hope that you kind of consider this for your next gig or your next client work. I think they're going to be pretty stoked about it. Also, if you want to follow me on Instagram for a shorter version of how to set this up, I'll try and keep it under a minute. That way you can just use it as a reference for your next gig. And then on top of that, if you guys want to check out PrimslensFX and just kind of get one of these filters, I highly recommend the variable ND. It's just super good. It's quality. You can use code OLLIE and get 15% off your next purchase. Other than that, guys, I appreciate it, and I will see you guys around.